Thank you very much for the invite. This is my first appearance at the conference, and obviously first time talking as well. Now, obviously, well done to Malcolm as well on a fantastic presentation. So it's kind of follow that one really. But as you can see, the topic that I've chosen is the construction skills shortage in the UK. So something that is very important to me, of course, in the industry that I operate in recruitment. Something I'm very passionate about, but really concerned about too. Is something that I did a presentation on with the CIOB about a year or so ago. It really got me thinking, and it was something I wanted to do again, but try and elaborate on my thoughts back then and experiences, I suppose, since my presentation a year ago or so. So really, this presentation is kind of about my kind of slant on things, certainly coming from a recruiter as perspective. So I want to take you through kind of where we are as an industry in terms of where the construction industry is, really, what the problem is, and trying to identify some certain areas that we can focus upon as well, see where we can improve as recruiters, which I'll come on towards the end. And of course, the construction shortage is nothing new. You know, it's been around for a long time. It's kind of old news. I feel sometimes it's something that gets brought up every year. But nothing much actually changes. So it's really just to throw some ideas out there as well. But initially, like I say, this is my first effort. So just a bit about me and who I am. So I've been a recruitment professional for 18 years. As you can see, started out in 2002. I was a trainee with a large corporate agency. I've always recruited into the construction and property industry. It's something that's very, very close to me. I hasten to add, I didn't come from a construction background, which is something I will go on to a little bit later, and probably something that hampered me in the early days as well. 2013, I then joined a large independent organisation, had a great opportunity there. I managed to progress, opened a few offices, had some people working for me, which was a great experience. But really for me, I wanted to then move on and do something for myself. I want, there's certain criteria I really believe in. I'm also really passionate about the industry, and I think working for a company, you can be restricted sometimes. So for me, HRG gave me a fantastic opportunity to go out with them as a joint venture. And I did that in January of this year. And of course, not the best timing. We weren't to know what was around the corner, but, I think, getting through this really tough time will hold us in good stead, and hopefully the industry too. So moving on, this is really just construction at a glance. This is pre-COVID statistics, as you can imagine. So construction was employing in and around 3 million people in the UK, generating over £100 billion annually, which is 7% GDP. Back in 2017, the government budget back then was pledging to build 300,000 new homes per year by the mid-2020s. I think this year we're on target. I think we're going to be shy of 200,000, I believe. I think it's around 180,000. The CRTB predicted construction output growth to be 1.3% per year between 2019 and 2023. Again, something I'll come back to later on in the presentation. So good figures, nice stats, but what's the problem? So what's the problem with the shortfall? So as per RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, back in January reported the shortfall in the number of skilled construction workers in the UK is currently at its highest point since 2007. Bearing in mind, this is January figures. A further 200,000 workers were to be needed to have been recruited during the course of this year. As of the last census, I know there's another one next year, 2021, but 2011 census, the average age of construction workers was 42. I saw one of the presentations earlier, which was a much more up-to-date stat, actually. The CRTB, I think, as of 2017, reported that to be 45. Over 22% of that workforce were over 50 and 15% in their 60s. So, although it might be a bit skewed when we get to March next year, but I think it would have given us some interesting stats again, possibly worrying stats where more people are retiring than entering the industry. So things to consider. I mean, something that's been spoken about a lot today is Brexit and COVID, which I'll come on to in a second. But Obviously, everybody here is involved in construction. Everyone know that, you know, how important foreign migrant labour is to the industry. Now, using London as an example, 1/3 of the construction workers in London are from overseas, which I think is a sign of the times, which is absolutely normal. But what could be worrying is the 28% of workers that are from the EU, because it's all about what ifs and buts and maybes at this stage. And if EU workers decide to go to different countries to operate post Brexit, the knock-on effect will inevitably damage the government's house building targets, but possibly more importantly to businesses over here. Demand will outstrip supply, so therefore costs will inevitably be driven up. Impact of COVID, of course. Well, I'm sure we've all had enough of it, really. And what you know, like I said, what hasn't been said already, but ultimately, and again, a lot of these predictions, but construction output could be down as much as 25% come year end, compared to the predictions of being up 1.3% year on year. Redundancies are in excess, or predicted to be in excess of 100,000, with 1 in 10 construction workers still on furlough. And unfortunately, without trying to be too doom and gloom here, but it's quite likely that most of those people on furlough are going to be at risk of redundancy too. So that will only worsen. The entire workforce, again, predicted could be down as much as 10% by the end of the year, which would obviously be a lot more than 100,000 redundancies I've already stated. So worrying times, but as if it wasn't bad enough, during the pandemic, construction workers have also suffered the biggest drop in wages too, as per industry. In a kind of bizarre twist though, as again, I saw something a bit earlier on one of the presentations, but something I picked up on as well, where workers from other industries who have perhaps lost their jobs or whatever are actually enrolling into construction courses at a higher rate than ever before. And I think where output is down, you kind of think, well, is this going to address the skill shortage balance? Well, possibly, but again, probably not. My fear is that it will be a false law, and I think again, it's something I'll come on to a bit later. But the trade to fall back on kind of suggestion, which really irritates me, is something that this might be a cause of this. I think people might be in panic mode and looking around and thinking, what can I do? Well, okay, I'll go and get a trade, but will this be short term? Quite possibly. I'm not too sure. Time will tell. So, is there an easy solution to all this? Well, of course, no. Nobody could have predicted what 2020 would bring. But in terms of the skill shortage, the shortage that was already there pre-COVID is still going to be there post-COVID, as far as I'm concerned. There is no short-term solution, but the solutions have to be mid and long-term. And the four most important facets in that, I believe, is the government, it's schools, not necessarily all education facilities, but schools in particular, employers, so construction businesses, and us, so employment agencies, have to take a huge responsibility. So I'm going to touch on all of those just very, very quickly. So government support schemes at the moment. So there's Construction Talent Retention Scheme, which began in the summer, which is free to use for construction businesses until April next year. Kickstart Scheme, which is available to everybody, which has already started, but I think that the first beneficiaries will be from November. And the apprenticeships, which I'm going to touch on in a moment as well. And are these schemes helpful? Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. If it means trying to retain staff or get new people into the industry, then of course they're helpful. But certainly the first two are very, very short term. I think apprenticeships, you'll see, aren't being utilised. I think the difference of opinion with apprenticeships across construction is wide and varied, but the stats don't lie. I think what businesses probably need to do is invest more in training and try and convince that apprenticeships are a way to go. I mean, the government invested millions and billions in apprenticeships and it's not being utilised. Only 1% of employers have taken on an apprentice, despite the investment. Construction on average also invests less in training than other industries, which is interesting, where you've got tech skills which are in decline in construction as well as the labour intensive position. So training and development with the staff that you already have, is huge. It empowers people. It gives them goals and ambition and targets, and ultimately it'll improve your chances of retaining your staff. But I think most importantly for me, and this is the thing that kept standing out for me a year ago or so when I did this before, was the image of construction. It's a real frustration of mine, and I mentioned earlier I don't even come from a construction background. I came from a sales background into recruitment. I've grown to love construction over a period of time, but it's the image of construction that seems to put people off, and I think that's only getting worse at the moment in young people. So they're less likely to pursue a career in construction than ever before at the moment, because it's still perceived as dirty work. And again, this comes back to the image, the perception. So we all need to work hard to improve that, I believe. And of course, the gender imbalance, it's startling, and the female workforce only equates to 12.8% of female staff. So again, what can we do to improve that? How can we improve that? Again, I think it starts at home, actually, and it starts in schools and then through businesses as well, and for us as recruiters. So on to education. Again, only 1 in 10 children school leaver age would consider a career in construction. I reiterate, it's considered dirty work, but also times have moved on. Been into schools, and I think top of the list now is YouTubers or to be gamers these days. So it's the same for a lot of industries, but I think construction is falling further down the list. Employers and recruiters could and should help schools with this, with the general perception. I think for me, the commitment that I wanted to make was going into schools and speaking to school-age children, so not college or university, actually, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and say, look, it's not just a job to fall back on. This is a genuine career that you can make. When I was back at school, a long time ago, I wasn't aware of the opportunities within construction, and now I recruit into the industry, kind of thinking, why didn't I think of this as a genuine career? But it wasn't given to me back then. And I don't think too much has changed. Parents and teachers, of course, as well, it starts at home, that they can take an active role in assuring that construction is a genuine career path. I think for academic children, I think they're still geared towards medicine, that type of industry. But again, construction is a wide range of roles there. And is construction still a job for the boys? Well, stats say that it is. Like I said, 12.8% of females. So how do we change that? And again, it's the perception of the industry. So we need to start younger, I believe, so in schools, at home. So at the bottom there, I put changing the stigma of construction. Having a trade should no longer be thought of as a career to fall back on. I mean, how many times do I hear that? And how many times did I hear it as I was growing up and in school and in college, etc. A trade should be a genuine career to pursue and move on to. It shouldn't be perceived as something to fall back on. So for me, for employment agencies, what can we do? I mean, we need to take as much responsibility as anybody. And again, I'll refer back to what I said at the beginning. I didn't have any construction experience when I got into the industry. So upskilling recruiters is massively important. I had to find my own way many years ago, 18, 20 years ago when I started. But I think recruiters should be given that education, should be given that training, should be spending time on site even, getting to know the industry, getting to know what makes it tick and what's important for you. Changing the emphasis from sales to nurture. What I mean by that, recruitment's still viewed as very much a sales industry, which of course it is, but the nurturing comes from, again, understanding the client and the candidate and being able to match the right candidate in the right jobs. And the way we can do that is engaging with clients more, to understanding what you want, what your needs are, but also say to employees, let us in as well. Let us in and see your offices, your sites, and what you actually need. Again, I've got that experience to pull upon, but people new to the industry wouldn't necessarily have that. So kind of help us to help you in a way. And of course, honesty and transparency for recruiters. When I left my last company, this is my strapline. This is what I built this company on now. And it's so important to me, and it's a huge bugbear of companies industry wide. Honesty and transparency. A lot of companies might not want to hear it sometimes, and recruiters might not want to give it, but it's so important to everybody. But ultimately, the construction worker is the most important element in the process. Without the construction worker, we don't have the industry. So it's attracting them into business, it's attracting them into industry, and it's keeping hold of them as well. It's retaining them to stem the flow of people leaving the industry. So take-home messages, like I say, I don't have all the answers. These are just suggesting things to talk about. 2020 has been a year to forget for many, but I actually think we could probably look back and learn from a few mistakes perhaps that have been made along the way. I think there's some new initiatives that have come out of it. It certainly got me thinking about the industry and thinking about recruitment too, and where we can really improve things. I think the big thing for me is this striving to change the perception of the construction industry, which is still there, unbelievably, really, but I think more needs to be done. Like I said, there isn't one answer to the problems. I think it's a combination of them, but again, I think with the government's help, with business help, schools help and recruiters help too, we all have to take responsibility. We're in it together. I think Malcolm was touching on earlier, we're all in together. If we can do this together, then it will just help us get out of this situation that we're in. So that's me. Thank you very much. There's my details. You should wish to get in touch, but if you've got any questions, fire away.
That's great. Thanks for that, Christian. So yeah, we have got some time. So if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to pop it in the chat or to unmute yourself. Murray, I've just seen you've just posted something. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Looking at or listening to the comments about getting people to take into construction and sort of stay in construction, I'm coming at it from a slightly different direction. I've been managing projects in sort of manufacturing for the last 25, 30 years. I'm looking for a move and a change, and one of the areas I've been looking is construction. What I think I'm finding a problem with is because I haven't got many years of direct construction experience, I need to find the right person to talk to, because if you submit a CV for a job, the job will be sifted in a lot of cases automatically, and you won't get beyond submitting a CV. I'm looking for some ideas. If anybody's got any suggestions on how to kind of bypass that a little bit, because it's actually very difficult to get to speak to a recruiter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree at the moment. I think that the problem everybody has right now is that there's a lot of people in the job market. There's a lot of people looking for work. So from our side of things, when a recruiter will put an advert out, for example, the amount of applications you get is astronomical.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest issue for job seekers is they don't get the feedback. They don't even get the rejection sometimes. They just don't get the contact. But this isn't a poor me statement, but the reality is that it's so difficult to have a conversation with the 60, 70, 80, even 100 plus people that have applied for that one role. So the easiest way to do it is to find, you'll always see the recruiter's details, they're recruiting for the job, and just pick up the phone and phone them direct. I always think it's much more of a statement of intent, where somebody phones me up, picks it up, rather than applying through the normal portal scenario.
Yeah.
Which of course is the right thing to do, but I think getting to the jugular, so speaking to the recruiters, pick up the phone to that individual that's recruiting.
I've had a few conversations with a couple of people. One of the problems you have is, as you touched on before, if there's 100 people applying for the jobs, these recruiters are very, very busy. So the majority of the time, you just get an answer phone, which is a bit of a problem. So it's kind of a just trying to figure out if there's a different approach to trying to get in front of people, and say you need to find the one person that. I think if 12 months ago I'd have been in the same situation, I'd have probably had a lot less trouble, because there were a lot less people looking for every role.
Yeah, and that's very true. But ultimately, the recruiter's not doing his job or her job if they're not picking up the phone and calling you back. I mean, there's so many different means of getting through to people now, whether it's text messages, WhatsApp, emails. There's no real excuse not for getting back in some shape or form. I think it might be a little bit deeper with yourself, where your background is different. It's manufacturing, I think you said. Yeah. So people might be looking at the CV and thinking, no, on to the next one, on to the next one.
Yes.
Again, I think the situation we're in, there's still about skill shortage. I think employers actually should be looking into a different talent pool. So whether that's military, whether it's manufacturing. There is transferable skills there. But again, I think for us as a recruiter, you know, sometimes the solution we're looking for is a quick one. It's a quick fix. So you want those right skills for the company immediately. But I'm not shifting that onto employees now and saying, look, come on, just let anybody in. But I think it's worth a conversation. I think construction needs to look into other different pools, and where you see hospitality and industries like that again on its knees really. You know, are there certain skills in there that construction can dip into and utilise? Well, I think yes.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Okay. All right. Lovely. Thank you very much.
It's great. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Trevor, I was waiting for you to ask a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask it?
Yeah. Hello, Christian. Well done. Good presentation. Thanks very much. I've journalists been writing about the skill shortages, the lack of appeal to young people, the lack of appeal to females for many, many years, and nothing much seems to have changed. What more do you think needs to be done to change the perceptions? And are construction companies, in your view, doing enough to make their industry sound sexy enough to young people?
I actually think it starts before that. I honestly believe I deliberately left out colleges and universities when I mentioned education. I'm talking about schools. I think if you go as far back as 13, 14, well, GCSE age, I suppose, when children are looking at their options, I don't believe construction is spoken about. It's not an option. I think I mentioned in the presentation, it's the whole thing is perceived when you talk construction, you're talking about builders, dirty work on site. You're not talking about quantity surveyors and estimators and engineers and all those type of things. And I certainly, when I was growing up, and again, I totally agree with you, I don't think much has changed. When I speak to school leavers now, it's very much the same. So for me, I think it's my responsibility as a recruiter to start young, to go into those schools and talk to them there. So when they come out, they're already geared up and they're already thinking about, I want a career in construction. And then it's easier for the transition for employers, rather than employers being kind of backed into a corner to say, right, I need to employ females to tick a box, to fill a quota. Because really you want that gender imbalance to happen naturally, I think. But it has to start earlier. I think employers are doing a lot actually to encourage females into the industry. I certainly won't name any names, but I actually get a lot of people asking me if we have female staff available for certain roles, which I know we shouldn't do and entertain, but it's interesting people are starting to go that way. So I think that's positive. So I think employers are actually doing what they can. I do believe it's the schools and the perception, that's where it should begin. And even parents as well at home, I do believe.
I wonder why we're different to other countries, because we depend so much on overseas construction workers who have a lot of abilities. So it must be different in these EU and other countries that we need to get them, and they seem to be fairly plentiful. But over here, we just don't seem to be able to do it.
It's frustrating, but I think modern technology takes over. I've got two young sons that they're more interested in being on TikTok and YouTube, and that's a career for them. They're going to be YouTubers, So do they want to go outside when it's raining? Well, probably not. It's tough, but I do honestly believe it starts when they're really, really young. I think once you get to a point where they're maybe beyond university age, it's probably they might be lost to another industry. So I think start them young.